Alrighty, so we're looking at the 2024 Beaker argument analysis. So here, by this stage already, what are we thinking? Our local gym is a fitness center that caters to a local community. Until recently, it was supported by a council subsidy, so council paid. Recently, it's been withdrawn and it's been reallocated to other projects. Fuck, terrible. Um, so our local gym committee has called an emergency meeting. Emergency meeting. So think about how they're feeling already, because that's what you're going to have to describe, because that's the motivator. That's what's driving their language use. Does that make sense? Right? There we go. I'll just approve. I'll approve. I'll approve. Right? That's what's driving their language use. And then emergency meeting. So it's clearly critical to them. It's clearly something they take really, really seriously. And um, then the chair of the local gym committee, that's also a big deal, right? The boss, it's not just some guy, it's the chair of the committee coming around, Sandy Gestalt, to present a following speech with slides. That already tells us that they care enough to prepare not a spontaneous discussion, but a meticulously pre-prepared, pre-structured delivery. Does that make sense? Do you see everything that I just extracted from there? Guys, give me some acknowledgement. Talk to me, unmute, ask me questions. What are you hearing? Right? So, so far, just from that info alone, what have we learnt? Right? Our local gym is a fitness center, caters to a local community. Okay, so we're already in-house. It's warm, there's an in-group. And then it was supported, but now it's not. Wow, so the ground is emptied underneath them. Understand them empathetically. It's been withdrawn and it's been given to other things, the money for it. Right? That warm feeling has been taken away from them, and they've got an emergency meeting. They're clearly upset. To them, the issue is urgent, and their chair, the boss of their committee's come out, not with anything, but with a speech and accompanying slides, which means, God, they've taken this very seriously. Do you see how I think? Do you understand what I'm saying? Are we on the same page? Beautiful. So when we read this blurb, let's try and answer these questions. Tell me, everyone, what are we actually discussing? What is the field of discussion? Bang, go, quick fire in chat. I want responses from everyone. Fire, come on. What is the field of discussion? Yasmin, Taranum, Tabassum, Ruth, Vicky, Ray, Martin, Gloria, Emily, Aria, Arvin, Ali, Alana. What is the field of discussion, right? Oh, I've got, beautiful. Okay, I've got Jim. I've got Jim being taken away. Give me ideas. Come on, right? I've got council money. I've got three responses. Come on. There's like 11 of you. Keep going, right? I've got the field of discussion is the newly arisen, the newly posed issue of the gym's local support being diverted. Thank you, Ruthvik. I've got the field is that our local gym is being denied funding by the council. Okay. Funding that the council isn't considering everyday people, they're not considering the people that actually use the gym, they're abandoning their community. Beautiful, sure. We're discussing the issue of funding that has been withdrawn. Beautiful, right? The issue of withdrawn funding. That's a great semantic field you've identified, Yasmin. Well done. All of these are nice. The examiner basically wants to see either one of these. I like that. I'll make it green. So now, who are the audiences? How do they differ? The different audiences, who is it directed at? And what strategies are they using so far from what we know? Just from the blurb, who are the audiences? How do all the different audiences differ? How does that affect the author's strategy, right? What strategy are they using to appeal to these audiences? I've got audience. There's multiple audiences. Of course, there's members of the gym, but who's the most important audience? The most important audience, right? Well, initially, yes, it's members of the committee, right? With intentions for the council to also be an audience. Beautiful. Beautiful. Now, for these two different audiences, how do they differ? How do they differ? Tell me, how do they differ? Are they the same? Are they on the same page? Tell me, right? Members of the committee versus the council, do they differ? How? And the strategy, good, I've got strategy is, preparing a speech, right? Key word, preparing, right? Slash prepared, right? Equals meticulous, right? Plus slides, right? Um, well, the main audience so far are the committee members of the gym. So they are mostly gym members. It's not necessarily the council right now, right? But maybe in future it will be the council. The members of the committee care more for the livelihood of our local gym. Yes, Stolt also attempts to convince the council to resume funding. Okay, there's some strategy. I like that. Nice. Now, tell me, just from what you know, what do you think? Is the speech going to be formal or informal in terms of register, right? And how does that affect the strategy or the outcomes? Is it going to be formal or informal? Tell me in chat. What's the register? And of course, does anyone not know the difference? If you don't know these things, you ask me, like Sepanta, what do you mean by formal? What do you mean by informal? What does that even mean, right? It's 100% formal. Beautiful. It's a very, it's a formal speech, right? It's a very serious topic to them, right? It's even quite sensitive. Do you see how I'm looking at their emotions, right? I'm looking at their emotions and their reactions, slash empathetically assessing them, right? Slash using emotional intelligence. Does that make sense? Right? Are we on the same page? Beautiful. Now, what's the author's role and relationship with the audience, right? Like the relative power that, he holds over them or she, what's the author's role or relationship with the audience? Think about the author, who it is. Sandy Gestalt, the chair of the committee, the audience being maybe users of the gym, members of the community, members of the council. What are all the different relationships? Because when we're pushing for an argument, when we're trying to persuade someone, we have to appeal to multiple audiences at once. It's not just, you know, Australians. Guys, I hate that. Sometimes students hit me with the audience, Australians. What? What did you say? Right? So I've got what's the author's role or relationship with the audience? The relative power of that. How does that affect their delivery? Right? Think about that. Okay, I've got she's like the head of a community. She's the spokesperson for the community. They're a community, nice, not necessarily a power imbalance, but she is leading. She's the chair of the committee. That makes a difference. You need to acknowledge that. If you never mention that there's the fact that she's the chair of the community, the chair of the committee, if you don't mention that to the VCA examiners, you will lose marks, right? Like, you have to mention that the fact that she's the chair of the committee makes a difference, right? She's like their voice. She's the one that's representing them. That makes a difference. And how does it make a difference? Guys, do you see the questions I'm asking you? This is what you need to be asking yourself when you're in a sack or when you're on the exam, because I'm not going to be there holding your hand, am I? Right? She's the leader, not the owner, but the leader. The owner of the gym was the government, I believe. Right? Beautiful. These are the questions you're meant to be asking yourselves. Every lesson is a lesson on what questions you need to be asking yourselves. That's it, right? So you need to be able to know, like logically, if I'm analyzing an argument, I need to know everything about it. I need to know who's saying it, who are we saying it to, why are we saying it, when are we saying it, where are we saying it, with what goals, how are we saying it, what's our strategy, how did the audience react, or how are they emotionally, who exactly are they? Right? Do you see how, in order for me to be an analytical, accurate thinker, I need to ask all these questions? Otherwise, how are you going to write an analysis on anything if you don't have all the variables? Alana, Ali, Arvin, Ario, Emily, Gloria, Martin, Murray, Ruthik, Talas, and Taranum, Yasmin. So far, do we understand? Are we on the same page? Right? Any questions? If you have questions, ask me. If you don't have questions, say no questions. I want to see all of you active in chat. I want to see you unmuting. If you can unmute, I would love that. Right? Beautiful. I've got no questions, no questions, no questions, no questions, no questions. Okay, no worries. I've got beautiful. So these are all the questions you need to be able to show the examiner you understand. Who are the audiences? How do they differ, and how does that affect the author's strategy in sending that message to appeal to those different audiences in unique ways? And then, is the speech formal or informal? How does that affect the author's strategy or outcomes? And then, what's the author's role or relationship with the audience? The power the author holds over them. How does that affect their delivery or their strategy of achieving their end goals? Right? Where is it set? How does that setting change the delivery or the strategy? You don't need to come up with these questions on the exam. It's the same questions for every single text. Do you guys see what I mean? It's the same questions for every single text. It's the same questions. Do we understand? Like, what is the author's goal? What do they wish to achieve? Right? If you can't answer that, then how can you look at their argument? You have to know why they're arguing, who they're arguing to, how they're doing it, when they're doing it, where they're doing it, in what way they're doing it, right? Um, Now, where is it set? Do we know? Uh, no, not really. It's in part a speech. It's a speech, it's a presentation with some slides. Okay. So it's basically a speech, right? In the committee, right? So, Ali, you really hit the nail on the head. English is very much doing a Q&A with yourself. And even for text response, even for text response, we're gonna break down some classic text response theme questions next week, right? And what you're gonna see is even in text response, it's constantly about asking yourself questions. So if they're quizzing me about a certain interlocutor or a certain character in a text, a certain director's intentions, I go, okay, why would the director have those intentions? What was the director's broader sociological and societal goal with that movie or with that book, right? How did that goal express itself as strategy? What did that individual achieve through that? How is the language of the characters and how did the author account for the audience in this text response? Do you see how even in a text response these questions work? Who's going to be reading this book? Or who does the author want to resonate with this book? Or who does the book want to remedy? Who is the book designed for? How does the book, address the sociological inconsistencies or insufficiencies of a given demographic or group in society? Does that make sense? Right? And that's text response. So it's a completely different section. But do you get what I'm saying? Right? Are we on the same page so far? But that's text response. So do you see, like, a lot of this is pattern recognition. Tell me, guys, give me something. I want to know that you're listening to me in chat. I've got, okay, yes, interlinked. I've got, yep, I understand. Good. Yep, I'm linked. Okay, good. And it goes for all types of writing. All types of writing, right? If you can ask yourself enough questions and then answer your own questions, technically, you don't even, you will never run out of things to write. So if you can actually answer your own questions, you'll never run out of things to write. So pose enough questions to yourself and you will never run out of things to write. Does that make sense? Because if you have enough questions, you'll actually have a challenge of like cutting down your writing because you're going to have too much writing, too many sentences, too many ideas. Does that make sense? Right? Are we on the same page? And that goes for argument analysis, goes for text response, and technically also creative writing, because all writing is sparked from questions. All writing is sparked from questions. Okay, beautiful. So where is it set? How does the setting change the delivery? Where were set at the local gym or with the local committee, right? And what is the author's goal? To save the gym and persuade the council, right? Beautiful. To express advocacy. Okay. So far, do you feel like you now understand this text, right? So let me get rid of this. We've answered the questions, but beautiful. Okay, right? And this is all about SAC ranking. So how SAC and exam ranks work. And I'll do a TLDR and I'll put this here. Basically, this explains it. So going to a really good school is like having insurance because you know that even rank 85 is probably better than your school's rank 8, right? Because Melbourne High collected that, 400 of the top kids. So Melbourne High took the top 5 kids from, 80 schools. So how is it, do you get what I'm saying? So they took the top 5 of your school, but from even better schools. So all their kids are top 5 at your school. So even rank 300 is like as good as rank maybe 5 of your school, depending on the subject, right? Um, Now, beautiful. I like English mainstream more than literature, but I like English language the best. English language is my favorite English. Beautiful. Alrighty. Why do I like English language the best? Uh, which one's easier? I would say Ing Lang, if you're mature and emotionally intelligent, and if you're really good at, say, argument analysis, you should definitely be doing Ing Lang. If you're really good at analyzing poetry and have the capacity to write and think really creatively or are willing to, literature, and English mainstream is a good middle ground of both. Um, the easiest is whatever you enjoy the most. You will always do better in a subject you love than a subject you don't. Life lesson. And for uni as well, when you're picking uni subjects, pick uni subjects that you will love, right? Very important. Um, well, you got to think like, do I like writing creatively? Would I like analyzing poems, right? Answer those questions. But we can talk about that later. Message me. All right. So, as I kind of always like to say, right? Argument analysis is the ability to scrutinize and ask a lot of questions. So you must flesh apart on a very broad scale and on a very narrow scale. Zoom out all the way, look at everyone involved, everywhere they are, what they're talking about, what they want. Then you zoom in all the way and you start looking at the actual language and the photos and what the photos are of, right? And, it's a she looks like a young girl enjoying herself at the gym. She's having fun. Why would you want to take these cutie people, whatever they are, out at the gym or whatever, right? Um, so if a prime minister is at war and he says, "We will win, we will survive, we will prevail," the stock standard response is, to give people hope. Well, okay, it's true, but that's surface level. Given that he's the Prime Minister of a democratic nation, Australia, reliant on poll results and votes, utilization of the first person inclusive pronoun we, as well as the high modal verb will, allows the Prime Minister to establish a sense of collaboration, unity, harmony, and teamwork in a time of deep emotional strife and war, right? And the repetition, the strategic repetition to reinforce those ideas, right? So the author's going to have so many different intentions, and your job is to highlight those intentions. Um, Beautiful. Now, let's actually try and write an AA together, right? Um, at the very least, I'm going to write it, and I want you guys to contribute. But let me delete this. Live writing session is what we're going to do. Okay, are we locked in? Are we zoned in? Are we listening? Right? So let's talk about this now. Um, let's think of it like this. I think I'm going to break it down into steps, right? Um, I'm going to break it down into steps. And I've got, are we going to do any writing today? No, not today. You'll have homework, but we're just going to do a lot of group writing. So I basically want to write a full argument analysis on this text right here, on all of these texts and stuff, right? But we'll get to it. We'll get to it. First and foremost, um, the point that I want to make, sorry, this is what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought. Um, Again, accurately identifying the overall contention, looking at the sub-arguments. So the main argument is, oh no, we're losing the gym. We really need it. It's very unfortunate. A lot of people are going to be very sad and it's so unfair. That's fine. But what are the sub-arguments? Does that make sense? So I'll pull that here. Live writing session. One, it is non-negotiable to miss the contention. You must also not ignore the sub-arguments, right? Main argument is obvious. What are all the little angles the author is using to persuade? There we go, right? Um, Beautiful. No, we're not doing any writing today. It's you're gonna watch how to write one, and then I want you guys to be able to write one on like a full exam scale and send it to me so that I can correct it, right? You really need to show understanding of the audience, the context, and the author's purposes in even writing or, writing this piece in the first place, right? Pivotal, absolutely pivotal. Um, Now, in terms of actual analysis, right? Analyze how the language has worked or functioned to persuade, okay? Explain the intended impact on the audience through that language, okay? Does that make sense? Then you embed quotes in and around these explanations. Beautiful. And then link all your techniques to argument progression, right? How are we progressing in terms of arguments, right? Beautiful. Now, like, actually tell me like what idea did that strategy reinforce, right? Like what idea did it, or what values did it appeal to, right? Or even, like how did it shape the reader's response, right? Does that make sense? And again, that like analysis of how the argument evolves throughout the AA. Like use all of this as a checklist. Do you get what I'm saying? Use it all as a checklist of like, have I talked about that? 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 Right? Do not forget visuals, discussion about the images, right? Um, Beautiful. And within the visuals, it's like the symbolism, the placement, the symbolism, the placement, the actual meanings behind what's there, right? Um, that's okay, Alona, no worries. Um, and Yasmin, you can do separate paragraphs for each, but argument analysis does not need concrete structure, okay? It does not need concrete structure, so don't worry. Um, okay, that's all in place. Again, that precision really matters. Your logic really matters. You need to show that you're in control. Beautiful. Uh, Alrighty. So, again, like making those clear links between the audience and the strategy and the impact, right? The language, the tone, the visuals. right? These are all beautiful spider webs of information that you need to show you can form connections about. Okay? Now let's actually get to writing. All right? So use this as a bit of a checklist, right? That's your checklist. That is your non-negotiable checklist. It's everything you need. Um, do we have any questions about any of that so far? Anything at all? Any questions on it? Thoughts, opinions, queries? Are we all good? No, that's okay, Ali, no worries. Okay, okay. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Right. I've got um how can I memorize commentary in English? That's a great question. That's a great question for everyone. Um, we can actually talk about that. Beautiful. Let's talk about that. Just quickly before we get into writing, because we have today's a content day. You guys aren't writing, so how do I memorize lots of commentary or writing for a sack? Great question. And guys, ask me questions like that if you have them. Right? This is, in any week, ask me, but there's a lot to learn, right? Whew. And that is pretty packed, right? As a rule of thumb, repetition is absolutely king, right? As a rule of thumb. Um, what I used to do is I literally would grab a practice prompt, practice exam section, practice sack, and start writing using as much of the content that I had pre-prepared and memorized, right? As much of it as I had pre-prepared and memorized. Fair? Does that make sense? Right? So how do I memorize lots? I would use prompts. And then afterwards, I'd compare it to the full version and see what I forgot. And then I'd look at it for a minute, look at the bits I'd forgotten for a minute, close that page, go to a new page, and try rewrite that paragraph from full and miss less of the information than last time. It was brute force blurting, then check what I missed, then blurt again, then check what I missed, then blurt again. So try to dump it all from memory again and again and again, and really strain your brain for it. No, I never did any memorization before this. Like, I prepared the full paragraph. I would read it once. I would close the page, and I would try and write as much of it as I can remember. Does that make sense? And maybe on the first try, I'd barely get a sentence correct. And maybe on the second try, I'd only get two sentences through. And then I'd flip back, read it in full, maybe write it once, looking at it in full, and then close that page, go from memory again. Does all that make sense? I didn't need to do this for any other subject, but because um, I probably I probably needed to write each paragraph like this with 6 attempts, 4 to 6 attempts. It's a lot of time. I mean, you just cannot brute force or fake your way through it. It is seriously. It is blood, sweat, and tears to get the job done if you want to get a crazy score, right? Unless you thoroughly have, you know, argued your points so much that, like, you've thoroughly argued your points so much verbally to people, and you're so articulated and talented that you just understand it all and could write it in a new combination inside out because you are genuinely such an astute, talented communicator, right? Because what that means is like, right now, guys, I could basically speak a whole essay about imperialism, colonialism, and capitalism to you, and the fall of the Spanish colonials, which meant the British colonial system created the global financial system, which means now we live in a system where we're all basically, enslaved through tax evasion to Britain, and Australia can only exist in the first world because it was plugged into the British financial systems ecosystem in 1788. So, do you see how, because I know it inside out, because I've taught it, so maybe try teaching your friends, or maybe have arguments with them about the books, and that'll sharpen you up because I've spoken about it so much that my speech is almost an essay if I want it to be, right? So argue about it or teach it to your friends so much that you can talk about the books or the creative or the AA content on autopilot, such that your speech transcribed could literally be an essay. That's the other thing. Does that make sense? That's a fantastic question, and this is really important, right? But does that make sense? Like, do a bit of all that. Try to teach it to your mum. Get her to sit down. Try to teach it to your friend. Get on Zoom, you know, argue with them back and forth about the prompt and say, hey, but actually, the author was trying to do this because then why would they have brought in the character in chapter 6 to say this in this way if that's not what they wanted? Do you see that type of argument, that kind of intellectual stimulation back and forth and what it achieves? Do you understand? Right? So memorization is all interlinked to understanding and the ability to teach, which means you have the ability to apply that idea. So, correct. If you can teach something to someone, you know it. Like I could talk to you about the 1638 Ottoman border that was drawn between Iran and modern-day Iraq. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, that's fine. Cheers, just easy. Um, so, you can talk about the 1638, 1639 Ottoman border, which was drawn between Iran and the Ottomans, which is modern day Iraq. And I can talk about how the Safavid dynasty of the Persians, transitioned to Shiism to distinguish themselves from the Sunnis, the Sunni Muslims that were Ottomans, right? So no matter if I can teach you something, it means I can understand it well enough to write about it naturally. Like I can just get onto a piece of paper and start writing about the 1974, 1971 American petrodollar agreement series and the debasement of the US dollar and the Bretton Woods Agreement and World War II and how after World War II every country in Europe was broke and America had money and wasn't destroyed. So it started to finance for all the other countries, and it basically took over Britain's role as the global financial rule maker, created the International Monetary Fund. It made all the rules. It started to imperialize and became the global reserve currency. And then eventually said, haha, we're not even going to back our currency on gold. Whatever our currency is and however much of it exists, you will worship, which means they control everything in the transnational banking system. So do you see how I can just talk? If you can do that about the books that you're studying or the creative that you're writing or the content of an AA, right? Like, you know what I'll do right now? I wish I could transcribe this. I can literally talk through an AA for our local gym. Do you want me to show you guys how I would do it? I can literally talk through it because if I just read it and I'll understand it well enough, I can systematically talk through it. Do you want to see me do that? Yes or no? Tell me in chat. Is anyone interested in seeing me do that? I've got yes, 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 yes. And that's why students that do debating perform really well. So if you're in the younger years, do debating. You'll be on the money. All right, okay. I'm gonna close chat. I'm just gonna look at the text outright. So, thank you for attending this emergency meeting to vote on the future of our local gym. We find ourselves in an uncomfortable position, but as a group of people who have worked together, worked out together for years, we know that together we can save our local gym and ensure its future. So, I'm already thinking like in her speech to members of our local gym, the committee chair, Sandy Gestalt, argues that the gym community should vote in favor of partnering, right? As we know, with long live lollies. All right. So before we move on to possible solutions, I want to acknowledge the history and the value of our local gym to both you, our members, the wider community, our local gym. It's been in operation for 47 years. That's a funny number. If you know, you know. We built it from scratch with council support, local fundraisers, fees from you, our members. We have, for years, been a safe space for all people. And for the young and young at heart, this space is where you have built your fitness, your strength, your confidence, while at larger commercial gyms have flourished and they cater for a different clientele, for people who are looking for competitive places, people who flock like moths to flame shiny new equipment, right? Giant flat screen TVs, obnoxiously loud music matching athleisure wear, those who love posting gym selfies. But our local gym has never been that. We just provide an opportunity for anyone to experience success at any level of fitness. It's for all bodies, all fitness journeys. We train for life. However, we recently lost the annual council grant. We've relied on it for decades to keep our local open. As you know, we tried to appeal to the council to reverse its decision, but unfortunately, we missed the deadline. And the funding has already been reallocated. Do you see the change in tone? Did you guys notice that I changed my tone when I went from at our local, we value acceptance for all bodies and all fitness journeys. We train for life. However, we've recently lost the annual council grant that we've relied on for decades to keep our local open. As you know, we tried to appeal to the council to reverse the decision, but unfortunately, we missed the deadline, and the funding has already been reallocated. The council grant was important to our local for two reasons. It supported the maintenance of our building and it enabled us to keep our fees low and in line with the needs and the lived experience of our community. In seeking alternative funding, we've considered a series of bleak options. Raising admission costs beyond what our community can afford, including young families, refugees, and seniors. Privatizing the fitness center or closing the facility entirely and watching our local be demolished and turned into a car park. But we found another option, a lifeline. We've been approached by a company about the neglected shopfront on the south side of our building. They see real potential in the vintage grassroots community vibes. The proposal includes an agreement that they will upgrade the shopfront at their expense. They will pay us rent, which will cover what we would have lost in the council grant, and this will guarantee our local gym's low membership and admission fees. And it might even leave extra funds for upgrades. The group is Long Live Lollies. Long Live Lollies is a popular confectionery company you might be familiar with. They sell lollies at reasonable prices in a retro-themed shop. Recently, their own lease has been terminated. This offers us a chance for a win-win situation. Clearly, it solves our immediate financial problems, but it does present challenges. So the contrast, clearly, while this proposal solves our immediate financial problems, that's a middle focus, and then an end focus, it does present challenges. Clearly, obviously, front focus, so we've got an easy response. It does address our immediate financial problems, but it also presents challenges. Our local gym and Long Live Lollies do not, at first glance, share much in terms of values. Our local offers education about nutrition and the best fuel for our bodies and supports members of the community for whom fitness can feel out of reach. While Long Live Lollies sells food with limited nutritional benefit, there is no doubt that bringing these two businesses together in one building presents a serious clash. Taking into account this clash of purposes, we are for community and they are for profit. I want to make it clear why we support this proposed partnership. The first is, unsurprisingly, money, appealing to the pocket. Long Live Lollies have been nothing but a sweet delight to work with. They understand our dire financial position, offering us upfront rent payments that will keep the lights on and doors open. Beautiful. They're keen to see our gym thrive and be part of our local gym community. They will also pay for gym memberships for their employees, a concrete gesture that shows their support. And while eating lollies excessively isn't great, the occasional treat or sugar hit can be a joy. At our local, we know that fun and laughter are as important to our health as regular exercise. This partnership can bring color and deliciousness to our doorstep. And so we hope that's a metaphor. Maybe color and deliciousness is also the people still coming to the gym. We hope that a new community will be enticed to our local. Perhaps parents who don't know we exist will take their children to buy treats from Long Live Lollies, discover us, and join up. We don't have the advertising budget of large commercial gyms. This is an opportunity to broaden our reach by tapping into the customer base and marketing expertise of Long Live Lollies. Now, before we vote, front focus. Before we vote, just remember, we're not voting for ourselves, we're voting for the many who cannot attend tonight and those who hope to reach in the future. This is the only viable solution, and we as a community understand the need for compromise. To save our local gym, this wonderful place where we all get so much for our bodies and souls, we will need to bend and stretch some uncomfortable and perhaps stiff muscles. It will not be perfect, but if we can make it work, it will allow our imperfect community to flourish. So now I really understand the language. I know exactly who they are. I know what they want. I know what their goals are. Okay. So again, like I said, in her speech, she's arguing that the gym should be in favor of partnering with the confectionery company Long Live Lollies. That's my intro. In order to secure the gym's financial future, I'm instantly addressing the main goal. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to voice dictate this on my notes app so I can then copy and paste it across. Um, there we go. Okay, so look at that. I'm going to turn this on. All right. In her speech to our local gym committee chair, Sandy Gestalt argues that the gym community should vote in favor of partnering with confectionery company Long Live Lollies in order to secure the gym's financial future. So instantly I acknowledge the bigger picture, the end goal, what we're trying to do, everyone that we're dealing with right now. While acknowledging the ideological clash between a fitness center and a lolly shop, right? Obviously, there's a great contrast that I'm acknowledging there. She's trying to say, hey, it's ironic that we're partnering with a lolly shop. Gestalt ultimately contends that this partnership is a necessity or necessary compromise to preserve the gym's accessibility, community identity, and longevity. Throughout the speech, she progresses from solidarity building reassurance to nostalgic value appeals to fear based urgency before reframing it all as a proposal that is financially pragmatic and morally justifiable. Full stop. The accompanying visuals, such as the girl doing the splits with the lollipop or the graphic cartoon of the lollies with love hearts walking hand in hand, right? Softens the resistance and reinforces the emotional trajectory and positions the partnership as vibrant and as community oriented rather than contradictory. Right? So that's like me as my intro, proving to the examiner I know what I'm talking about. So now, let's say my first idea is first and foremost, she establishes unity and she says it's our responsibility. The second idea I'm going to discuss is going to be romanticizing the gym's identity and almost being nostalgic about it. The third thing is creating urgency through financial threat and fear. Fourth of all, she creates a lifeline. She introduces, hey, there's a way out. And it seems to be our best option at the moment. Then finally, she addresses the value clash directly. She doesn't ignore it. She goes head on with the taboo and she says, hey, it's pretty ironic that we're partnering with a lolly shop and we're all about fitness, but I can explain. And then she expands the vision to the future, a new community, maybe some repairs and replacements and revamps, and new people that are going to discover us, or a new community, right? Does that make sense so far, right? Now, in terms of, I've got a question in chat. No worries. That's fine. Okay. So Gestalt begins largely at the beginning by thanking members for attending in the first place. By thanking members, she immediately foregrounds the urgency while simultaneously invoking collective agency. By stating we find ourselves in an uncomfortable position and repeating the inclusive pronouns we and together, she constructs this issue as a shared challenge rather than an administrative failure. So the language there works to diffuse the blame and it prevents resentment towards the committee, right? The repetition of work together, worked out together for years, cleverly fuses this emotional solidarity with gym culture. This reinforced shared history metaphorically suggests that just as members train together physically, they bond emotionally and they can, quote unquote, save our local gym collectively. This builds psychological alignment, right? And then she introduces that controversial proposal. So she first strengthens community bonds and communal bonds. Then she ensures that any later compromise is framed as collective act of protection rather than betrayal, right? Yes, it's a lolly shop, but don't worry, I can explain. That's the logic. So then she romanticizes the gym's identity. She shifts to nostalgia. She describes the gym as built from scratch with community and council support, right? With the local fundraisers and fees from you. It's your fees that built it. So let's not lose it. Sunk cost hypothesis, sunk cost, right? Fallacy, like putting you in the ditch. We invested in it. We have spent money on it. So that is a reminder of member contribution. It appeals to their pride, their ownership, their investment. It feels like a communal achievement to have even achieved this by now so far, right? And then contrast with the larger gyms, the commercial gyms that attract those who flock like moths to the flame to shiny new equipment. What does that do? It makes our gym look morally superior, authentic, not superficial. The mocking tone, the matching athleisure wear, the gym selfies, right? She's ridiculing commercialized fitness culture. That tactic reassures members that the proposed partnership is not going to affect the authenticity of the gym and will not transform the gym into one of those profit-driven, capitalistic institutions. The phrase, quote unquote, we train for life, right, then elevates their gym beyond physical fitness into a value system. It's reinforcing that it's about inclusivity and belonging. It embeds these ideas very early on. Gestalt anticipates the audience's likely objection that partnering with a lolly company contradicts health values. Thus, she strategically establishes moral credibility before introducing the financial crisis. And then comes the financial crisis, right? So she creates this fear, right? However, we have recently lost the annual council grant. What are we going to do? Right? The blunt statement, it interrupts her nostalgic warmth, it signals real danger. She emphasizes the consequences through listing bleak alternatives. We either raise the costs beyond what you can afford, and then she points you out, elderly, you, reading right now. Either privatizing the fitness center, holy shit, we're going to become the commercial sentence that we all hate, and or closing the facility entirely and watching our local, the gym, be demolished and turned into a car park. The image of demolition in a car park is fear-stricken. It's particularly emotive. It transforms abstract funding loss into a visualized destruction of their community space. The fear of loss, encouraging members to see compromise as preferable to disappearance, right? Then we're including vulnerable groups, young families, refugees, seniors. Gestalt is appealing to the social justice values. She implies that rejecting the proposal would then be disproportionately harmful to those that are most in need, which subtly frames the opposition as socially irresponsible, so that whoever disagrees is irresponsible. So now at this stage, the argument has really progressed from identity to existential threat. So now let's introduce the lifeline, right? Largely the phrase, but we've found another option, a lifeline. It isolates the end focus, a fragment sentence on a lifeline, a noun phrase, a lifeline, right? It heightens hope and relief suddenly as a contrast. It's like a rescue, right? There is a solution. It's crisis followed by salvation for all I care, right? She describes these, long live lollies as seeing real potential in the vintage grassroots community vibe, right? Suggesting validation of the gym's ethos, saying love, love, live, love lollies understands them, right? And so the company admires the gym's vibe. So she's like, hey, they get us, they understand us, they're on our team, we've got an in-group. She reassures them that the partnership recognizes them rather then undermines their culture. And then there's financial reassurance, which dominates the argument here. The company will upgrade the shop front at their expense. So wait, our gym's going to look even better, and they're paying for it, and they're going to pay us rent, which is going to cover everything that we've lost from the council. So the clarity of the exchange really appeals to logic. We're temporarily shifting from that emotional appeal to that pragmatic reasoning, and we're showing fiscal need being fulfilled with our responsible choices. So we're going from what we'd call pathos to logos to strengthen credibility, right? Now, then we're going to address the value clash, the taboo, right? So, rather than ignoring the contradiction between fitness and confectionery, right? Fitness and lollies, right? Fitness and, oh my God, fitness and a lolly store? Gestalt is going to acknowledge that these two businesses, quote unquote, do not at first glance share much in terms of values on the surface level. So suddenly, by acknowledging that, she's not ignoring the elephant in the room, which means you trust her more. That concession, taking that hit, taking that little loss, increases her trustworthiness. Then she reframes the clash as manageable rather than fatal. She says, hey, the occasional treat or sugar hit can be a joy. She broadens the definition of health to include fun and laughter. So that reframing neutralizes the moral objections, right? And then she goes on to long live lollies, says goodwill, they're going to pay for the memberships for their employees. So their employees are going to be gym members with us. So they're community oriented rather than exploitative. She transforms what could be perceived as hypocrisy into an opportunity for vibrancy and cross promotion. Then she expands the vision. We're going to attract a new community, parents who discover us and join up, quote unquote. Right? The dash mimics excitement and possibility, right? It looks, it's forward-looking optimism, which shifts the argument from this survival and strife and hunger and, death to sudden growth and life and hope. But by saying, hey, we don't have the advertising budget of a large commercial gym, right? So she frames it as strategic leverage rather than like this, oh no, we're desperate, we don't have a choice. It's smart collaboration, isn't it? Right? So it's from crisis management to this beautiful expansion, right? And now we got to think about the photos, right? This poster, right? Let me show you the poster, right? Where's the actual? Oh, there we go. Focus on the good. Long live lollies. What does the poster achieve, right? First of all, focus on the good. Bright, playful imagery, smiling mascots. And what you would call them is that these are anthropomorphized lollies or symbols because they've given them human eyes, right? So it's nostalgic and harmless. It softens the corporate identity of long live lollies. It's again playful imagery, smiling mascots, bright colors. Does that make sense? Yeah, they're shiny and alluring, right? And the slogan really directly mirrors Gestalt's rhetorical kind of, this irony that she's addressing. She encourages members to overlook the contradictions and instead concentrate on the benefits. So it's very much reinforcing that emotional pivot from that fear to the optimism. You've got this very, like, I guess, rather retro alignment with, that vintage grassroots vibe. It's suggesting this compatibility between two very head-on entities, right? Um, and then just quickly, the image, a child with a lollipop, right? Sitting at full stretch. You're synthesizing fitness and confectionery. There's a contrast. The child's flexibility, the happiness, the joy, the smile, the adaptability. You've got this closing metaphor at the end of this piece, this newsletter. There's so much writing on it. The council's about to lose their gym. And finally, the acknowledgement that you have to, quote unquote, bend and stretch some uncomfortable muscles. Like, hey, I know that some of you might disagree with this. I know that there is a contrast in morals and values between a gym and a lolly shop. I understand that some of you wanted this to be a community endeavor and not, seep into capitalism. But the child appears healthy and active despite holding a lolly, so it supports the claim. And at the same time, the innocence of that child evokes a sense of instinct of like, hey, like that's, that child's going to miss out on going to the gym. She just wants to have her gymnasium, right? So that aligns with the earlier references to the refugees, the elderly, the family, the future generations, right? And then right at the end, you have that final call to strengthen that emotional persuasion. So all of that accounted for, your argument analysis needs to be a complete and all-encompassing proof to the examiner that you understand what's happening, right? So, it's, like, you have to understand that, you know, we know it's not going to be perfect. We know this idea is going to appear naive. We know that this, it's imperfect, but it's necessary. Otherwise, our gym's going to get crushed. And so, in terms of features, solidarity, there's a shared history, there's nostalgic value, there's a fear of loss, there's introduction of a lifeline, there's, logical financial reassurance, there's a reframing of the contradiction, there's a vision of the growth, there's a communal moral appeal, right? So, what is she doing? Her end goals minimize resistance for the persuasion, give us broad definitions of what it means to be healthy and not hyperfixate on the sweets and the lollies, appeal to the inclusivity, and frame the compromise as necessary for survival. Okay, I've just stopped my transcription. Wow, that's a lot of writing. Um, but that could be a lesson on its own. Oh my God. Okay. Um, yeah. Now I've got questions in chat. Pathos and logos and ethos. These are references to whether you make decisions based off of emotion, credibility, or logic. So ethos is credibility, right? And trust, right? Do I trust this person? Will I believe in them? Pathos is emotion. It's to do with your pathology. And logos is logic. Log, logic, path, pathology, human being, emotion. Ethos is like the credibility, the expertise. Um, Alrighty. So I think that even this recording should give you like a lot of, and I'm gonna actually just copy paste this text across. uh, Live writing session. Pasting from iPhone. Oh, we're in. And after the lesson, I'll structure it so that it kind of separates my annotations and my ideas, but this is gold. This is gold. Okay. Now tell me, guys, do you have questions? Do you have concerns? Do you have queries, confusions, things you want me to clarify? Um, Anything? Do you feel like do you feel like that helped? God, sorry, I'm exhausted. That was a lot. Did I use blurting for anything else? I still use blurting for med school because med is all rote learning. I sometimes used blurting for health and human development and chemistry. Anything that needed me to memorize things, I'd use blurting for, right? 100%. Um, you guys don't have any questions? Um, well, in SAC conditions, how can I write a piece like that without having the time to go over it multiple times and changing it? Because by SAC day, you should have done at least like 15 to 20 practice exams in time conditions, and then looked at the exemplars from the VCAR reports and corrected it, um, and progressively gotten faster. Your literal hand muscles will get faster. You'll be faster at picking up opinions and arguments because you would have looked at so many different texts and you've pretty much seen everything someone can argue for. So by exam day, you should be thinking a whole lot less because it should be like flow state. Comes with practice, right? You literally need to do it so many times, look at so many exams, right? Um, I got a 49, raw 49. I didn't get a 50, guys. But that's because my school, because I got suspended in year 12, my school put me at rank 2 instead of rank 1. And we finished equal on SAC average. They said I'm unreliable. I've been suspended and I didn't do a year 12. They didn't give me a year 12 in the previous year because they didn't believe in me. But I ended up getting a roll 49 and rank 2 got roll 48. So what happens is in my SAC rank, imagine like I was 2 or 3, but I finished 1, which means that rank 1 got my top exam score as their SAC score, but their exam score was here, so they ended up scoring lower than me. Um, this is the guy who's our role model. Why did you get suspended? Guys, I graduated a couple of years, like 3 years, 4 years ago now. Wow, 2022. When do you think it's suitable to start doing practice exams? I mean, practice exams are the perfect source for practicing for your SACs and your exams. So now, from now, as SAC prep, yeah, like write the practice pieces, come to class, submit work in class so that I can correct your work, go back and forth with me. Based on my feedback, you'll go, ah, okay, I did that good. I should do more of that. Oh, that was bad. I should not do that. This is what a Raw 50 example looks like. Like, this is an exemplar of like everything that it really needs for you to succeed in an AA on this piece at Raw 50 level, right? To use exemplars, examples as reference points to copy ideas from. You do practices, you compare it with the exemplar for that specific AA, you get it corrected, you go back and forth. You can't do much more than that apart from become more mature and experienced in the world as a human being. And 80 minutes is a long time. If you guys did VCE English language, you'd have to do all of that in 45 minutes. So you're actually luxurious. And the top students happen to do it every year, right? Um, and yes, for every subject, you need to be using past VCA exams and VCA reports for everything, for every subject, for every subject. Does that make sense? I got 100 on two sacks, 94. I got 100. I got 9400, 9400. Yeah, something like that. And I went to and I also did really well on my exam. So I carried not only myself, but my whole cohort because I got the top exam score in my cohort and equal first on the SACs, but they put me as two. So the second guy who cooked the exam, his exam score became my SAC score. So I got damaged even though I was top. And yeah, getting 100 at a school like Baldwin is very hard, but getting 100 at a school like Scotch is even harder. You know, getting 100 at a school like Ballarat, Clarendon, or Melbourne High or McRob is even harder, right? And it just shows you the levels to it, right? But yeah, I got 500s, 5 or 600s on sax in year 12. I might have gotten the most hundreds in year 12 ever across all subjects at Bourne. Six in 1 year, something like that. I did well. There are right or wrong answers in English. Like, there is clearly, in English, there is clearly a sense of like, that is what you should write. That is what you shouldn't write. Um, and if you want to show that you have a complete style of thought, the good thing about English is that a lot of different people that have a lot of different ideas can all be equally right. That's why English is better, right? Does that make sense? Um, and I've got what subjects did I do? Um, chemistry, health, human, uh, methods, studio art, and I picked art strategically because I wanted to do art more as like a um, because I knew I could do well in it. And methods I did terrible in, and health and human I did well, but I didn't really do anything for. And chem I enjoyed. Chem I did a lot of past sacs, past exams. Asked my teacher heaps of questions. I really understood the concepts inside out. How did I enjoy chem? I loved chem. No, no, no. But year 12 chem is actually a great subject, right? No, I don't have my sac. I can send you the chem pass sacs, of course. Yeah, guys, of course. Man, the thing is, right, chem is really useful for the real world. Like, whenever I'm like microwaving my food, I'm literally thinking about the water particles that are being radiated and warmed up, right? I can send you guys a whole lot of past sacs for everything. 100% I can. Can you guys message me on Discord to remind me, and I'll send it into the whole Discord as an announcement, and I'll tag everyone. I'll send all the exams I can find, methods, chemistry. I don't have any of the English ones, and the books change. And I've got, how important is volunteering for our medical school interview? Not much. You need to be mature and composed and calibrated. I'll send it to all of you, don't worry. Just ask for it on Discord. All right, we've got a few minutes. Probably call it at 9 today. But what we can do is if you guys now want to allocate 20 to 30 minutes to write your own argument analysis on the 2024 VCA and send it to me so that I can correct it. And you can use the notes as a guide. You can use the notes as a rough outline of what you need, what should be a part of it. And right after this class, I'm going to look at the notes. I'm going to structure it so that all of that voice transcription I did on notes comes across as fully structured. If that makes sense. Are we on the same page? I might